Shiny Ads came into being about 7 years ago, 2009, when I was working with a friend of mine, a colleague, and he had a problem. He couldn't monetize his medium-sized site. And monetizing means generating revenue. He had advertisers wanting to pay him money, but it was really difficult to go through the process of actually extracting that money and giving them the ads that they wanted. And so we tried a bunch of different things. We tried outsourcing. And then in the end, I thought, I can't believe there's no solution out there that could smooth out the buying and selling of online ads. And that's the question that I think, for me anyways, always leads me to if there isn't one, why don't I build one? And so that's what happened with Shiny Ads. I realized that there really wasn't anything out there to automate the buying and selling of online ads. And it just so happened to be online ads, but really we could be talking about widgets. It's always a pain in the ass, buying and selling, negotiating pricing, getting credit terms, paperwork back and forth. Oh yes, here's the Excel form for you to order. And so that's a general problem overall, but it's actually compounded with online advertising just because of the way that it works. And so Shiny Ads came out 2009, at least it started. We were not going to make ads shiny. That was just a catchy name. And in fact, originally I wanted to solve the problem of crappy ads that we see online, because I hate ads. I never click on ads. So I wanted to go into advertising. But this problem came and hit me in the face, and I said, that's an interesting void that I think any publisher out there could use. And so in the end, I actually didn't fix the problem of bad advertising. I actually made it worse because I made the buying and selling of it faster and easier. I didn't fix the actual problem, which we're now seeing with ad blockers. So real quick, launched in 2010. Funded in 2011 by York, and I have a slide on that. We saw really good growth. We were doing, at the end of our history, we were doing a doubling, 100% year over year growth. And in fact, that continued on after our acquisition within Rubicon Project, where last year we did about $5 million in revenue. And in fact, right now we have two $100 million opportunities in front of that product team. We raised only about $2 million. And that's huge because in ad tech, it's mostly a US game with US players out of New York where there's plenty of capital. This is basically seed for most of those competitors, and we were competing with competitors that had 10x funding. And we definitely did it well. We got some awards. We were mostly in Toronto. We had one person in New York for sales. And this is really one of the reasons why we succeeded, because we were actually able, out of Toronto, to actually get a world-class set of publishers, customers. And I had one full-time salesperson who was awesome, and myself and some other individuals, but we really took care of our customers, and I think that's one of the reasons why we were successful. You see companies like Kijiji, which is Canadian. They're our only Canadian publisher. Everybody else was either US, there was a couple out of London, England, but mostly US. Top 500 publishers around the world. That's who we were targeting, and we did it out of Toronto. I'm going to go really quickly here. Buying premium advertising is broken. Buying the ringtone ad advertising that you see at the bottom of the page, that's boring. That's been done. It's an auctioning system, real-time bidding. That's not what we did. We went the complete opposite way. It's ironic that we were actually acquired by the leader in RTB technology, Rubicon Project, but that's another story. And so buying the top-end stuff, the valuable stuff, was broken. We turned it from this gobbledygook into a very systematic black box approach where the two ends were the same. You had a buyer out of an agency, and you had a seller, which was a web publisher. But the middle was all done for you, and it was automated. And so our revenue model, it was quite nice. We took a percentage off of all the transactions going through the system. So most days we would sit around playing foosball or going out and having fun while the revenue just kept on coming in. It's a great business model. And then we would actually collect the funds and then pay the publishers at the end of the month as well. So we had a nice little float. And this was the team. Again, we did this with a really small amount of team, and I'll show you why. So it was me, it was basically my COO, my right-hand man, Graham Huddlestone, and Michelle, who was our salesperson, awesome salesperson. We had 3 engineers, sometimes 4, sometimes 3, and they all kind of looked the same. We had a great board. They hated this slide. I wonder why. We had someone from the MLA. We had Scott in the room. Where's Scott? There he is. I haven't seen him in a while, from York. We also eventually got funding from weather.com, which turned out to be 80% of our revenue. And I'll tell you a little bit about them. They came on and so forth. We actually got someone out of New York as well. So we had a pretty good board. We had a lot of competitors. There were really 2 competitors. Shiny Ads and iSocket went head to head in a lot of competition. They had $17 million of financing. We had about 2. They were based out of San Francisco. They hired the top people that they could find, both in San Francisco and New York City, which was great because they could walk into any publisher they wanted to. These guys were a latecomer, so they really weren't that exciting. What happened was that Rubicon Project actually bought both of us, Shiny Ads and iSocket, and I actually caused that acquisition to happen. So real quick, premium ads, the stuff upstairs, up here when you go to our website, not down here, $20 per 1,000 page views, 25 cents per 1,000 page views, really huge difference. We were up there. And this is weather.com. And in fact, actually, if you go to weather.com today, you'll actually still see this. This is their public storefront. Clearly, you see this is kind of an e-commerce feel. It's like buying books, except you're buying an ad. The pricing is right there. It's very clearly stated. They have a private interface for their bigger buyers as well. And that's where we actually generated about 90% of our revenue. This is an example of it. So we turned to Rubicon, October 2014. We were acquired. November, iSocket was acquired as well. And we all got rebranded, obviously, to the black of Rubicon instead of the white and blue that we had. And we basically went for direct order fulfillment, which is what we were doing. It's direct between a buyer and a seller, as opposed to the auctioning system where it's kind of discombobulated. You don't know who the buyer and sellers are. And that's very different than what Rubicon had done in the past. And the nice thing was that, if you can read it, self-serve, which is what Shiny Ads became, was at the top of the funnel. And this really should be a pyramid. And the highest value ads that you could buy went through our system. The $20, $30, $75 CPM or per 1,000 went through our system, while everything else just kind of came down here. And then the auctioning market was right at the bottom, where you had pennies per 1,000 impressions. And so it was nice to be atop. And during the 16 months that I was at Rubicon after the acquisition, we actually came up with some really interesting use cases. It kind of forced us to look at the bigger picture, and this is what led the current product as it is to actually go for $200 million opportunities right now with some very, very large web publishers. Some of the largest e-commerce publishers out there actually are starting to use this. So not just the walk-up traffic, self-serve, the guy who has 20 bucks, but all the way here, something like vendors. You know, I left Rubicon a month ago. I was there for 16 months. I wanted to make sure that the product and the team were set up for success, and I wanted to start something new.